Okay. Okay. Hi guys. Good evening. Uh, I'm back with the next hematopathology video, which is in continuation to what we had been discussing. That was hemolytic anemias, and this had been disrupted by post chemotherapy marrow, which I had put, and another one was pap smears, both malignant and benign, which I thought were a little more important to discuss before I moved on to hemolytic anemias, the other types. I had discussed the membrane defects then. Today I am discussing the enzyme defects. So finally we are back on the track, and again it will go back to the same rhythm of hemolytic anemia, that is hematpath, and then next would be the malignant salivary gland lesions, which I had missed, which I had stopped in fact since I was doing pap smears. So without wasting much time, first of all, thank you so much. We have crossed 500 subscribers in such a short time for videos which are dealing with medical subjects, and that too something like pathology. To me, it is a big achievement, and I'm really overwhelmed. A big shout out to all of you. Thank you so much. All your love, support, and appreciation, and even criticism drives me to always keep working to improve myself and to at least upload one video per week once I'm back from the college, from my institute. So let's not waste too much time, and let me tell you about the topic. So as we all know, I have taken it in detail last time when I had started hemolytic anemias, that there are various hemolytic anemias due to various causes, and more commonly you see them in pediatric population, and it is very important. And the picture, the morphological picture that you get for an hemolytic anemia is quite overlapping in all of these causes, but the causes are quite varied, from as something like an infection causing hemolysis to something hereditary causing hemolysis. And that is the reason that we have to not only know about the hereditary or the individual cause, but also try and find out those particular pointers which will help us morphologically to make a diagnosis before we resort to any special investigative procedure which is expensive. So I had taken membrane defect last time, and to all those for all those who have not seen that lecture, I would request you to go and see it, so that you can refresh your memory about the membrane defects and how they look. So now I'll be moving on to enzyme defects. So G6PD hemolysis is the first and the most common that I think all of you know about. It is given in detail in textbooks, and yeah, before I give any more explanation, most of my data is from net and from Dr. Tejinder Singh's textbook that we all follow, and none of this, all the images etc., none of them are mine, and I don't have any financial interest in these videos. I don't earn from them, and I don't have any other source that is anyway infringing on anyone's copyright. I'm acknowledging whoever the contributor is. So yeah, that is important from the legal aspect. Moving on. So G6 glucose 6 phosphodehydrogenase is an enzyme which we have all studied in biochemistry, involved in the HMP pathway, that is the glucose metabolism pathway. इम्पॉर्टेंट इन RBCs क्योंकि RBC में न्यूक्लियस नहीं होता है, I mean the mature ones, and they have anaerobic glycolysis, and hence HMP pathway is a very important source for them to make energy and function and carry oxygen. And this G6PD enzyme is a part of that pathway, and when that pathway gets defective, the cell gets affected by certain toxins which it would not be affected by when G6PD was present. And that toxin is hydrogen peroxidase, which was formed by most of the bacteria, by some beans like fava beans, etc. Favism you must have heard of. And when you have this deficiency, we can't even prescribe anti-malarials to such patients. We have to go for higher therapy modalities because anti-malarials precipitate this problem. Okay, and then what happens is you will get a sudden bout of hemolysis. if you get exposed to any condition which will put you in stress, put you in a less oxygen situation, or more of peroxide will be produced, you will get hemolysis, and that can be of various degrees, presenting as various clinical manifestations. Next comes pyruvate kinase deficiency. It is not very commonly detected, but you have to think about it when you see a certain picture. Pyrimidine 5 nucleotide deficiency, again a DD, and an important enzyme deficiency which you have to think about. It is not as common as a person thinking G6PD. And methemoglobinemia, what I've written ahead are the ways you can differentiate. G6PD I'll take abhi, and pyruvate, these pyruvate and pyrimidine enzyme sort of deficiencies, you have to, apart from PS, you have to go for molecular analysis. Methemoglobinemia, we all have studied in first year spectroscopy. Okay, and it can occur due to a lot of things: carbon monoxide poisoning, high altitude, some dyes cause methemoglobinemia. So let's move on and take them individually. So coming to G6PD, this is an exam question. It is a sex-linked recessive disease. Means when two recessive genes are there, XX or XY, not only when you get two recessive genes, small XX, then only will it present, otherwise it won't. High prevalence of G6PD in an endemicity of malaria, it is partially protective. And then there's something known as Lyon's hypothesis, which explains to you that it is an X-linked disorder, so females are carriers, males are the ones who are affected. This is from Tejinder Singh Sir's book, where I told you that once you are exposed to hemolysis, then it will present at various levels, in various ways, in various severities, depending on how much G6PD is deficient. Okay, so from class 1 to 5, this is WHO grading. Class 1 and 2 are severe deficiencies, 3 is moderate, 4 is no deficiency. Alright, I mean, it is not that deficient to cause a clinical symptom. 5 is alright. Activity of the enzyme, as when it is severe, it is considered less than 10% of the normal. When it is moderate, it is around 50%, that is between 10 to 60%. 60 to 100%, supposing someone has 70% activity, so you won't call it exactly normal, but it will not have any clinical presentations. And sometimes there's increased enzyme activity, so that is also there. In the last two classes, of course, there will be no hemolysis, but in the rest there will be severe deficiency, there is chronic or intermittent hemolysis, and that way you categorize it. Moderately, you might get hemolysis when you are exposed to a certain stimulant. Okay, molecularly, I told you the role of molecular RT-PCR and all that is too much in these disorders. So coming to the molecular aspect of it, the G6PD-B and G6PD-A asterisk, this is electrophoretic mobility, मतलब electrophoresis पे ये hemoglobin कितने mobile थे उस पर depend करता है, and the positive and negative sign denote presence or absence of enzyme. So B with the asterisk is that this just variant has a certain activity and certain movement speed on electrophoresis. This A plus asterisk, it has some speed on electrophoresis and the enzyme is present. A minus asterisk means the enzyme is absent, but this kind of molecule is still moving on the in this RBC. The enzyme is absent and there's a certain speed of the movement which matches that of A with enzyme present. Mediterranean type, Canton type, Orissa, Kerala, Kalyan type. You don't have to remember this too much, except that you have to know that some names, at least the first three. Okay, B has normal activity, A plus has increased to normal because plus sign hai. Minus, of course, reduced activity. Mediterranean, remember Mediterranean, markedly reduced. When you have some enzyme activity, there will be no hemolysis. As enzyme activity decreases, you will have hemolysis. And this is the classification. This thing has been superimposed over here, and then the population where it is common. उड़ीसा केरला कल्याण से नाम ही समझ में आता है, साउथ इंडियंस में बहुत कॉमन है. कैंटन इन एशियंस, मेडिटेरेनियन अगेन नाम से समझ में आता है इन द मेडिटेरेनियन पॉपुलेशन एंड मोस्टली इन कॉकेशियंस एंड ब्लैक्स. This is the HMP pathway. Here you see the glucose metabolism going on. This is the enzyme, and this is the step where the enzyme is used. And when this is deficient, this NADP, NADPH is utilized in this pathway. Then the reduction, the glutathione reductase cannot act. Fine, and this NADP to NADPH conversion doesn't occur, and this H2O2 to H2O conversion won't happen because there is no glutathione reductase. This glutathione reductase is like an antioxidant, prevents the cell from oxidant injury, and these things cause formation of free radical, hydrogen peroxide, and oxidants. All this is class 1 first year MBBS actually. So mota the important point is free radical injury से RBC को this enzyme prevents by helping the action of glutathione reductase. When this enzyme is absent, the RBC will get prone to free radical injury. Free radical injury तभी होगी when there is less oxygen in the body. Hence, this is an entire cycle which goes on repeating itself. Again, difference between intravascular and extravascular hemolysis is again Tejendra Singh sir's book. It has this diagram. Both the ways actually the cell gets hemolyzed. The difference clinically comes in what you get and how you catch. Like intravascular matlab in the vessel the cell is getting hemolyzed. You will get hemoglobin urea and hemoglobinemia. Anemia matlab blood में कम हो रहा है, urine में बढ़ रहा है, that is urea. ठीक है, but extravascular is in reticular endothelial organs like spleen. So you will get splenic enlargement. You will get clay colored stools, you will get increased retic count, that you get in both actually, and then you get increased serum bilirubin. So this is more of a clinically पता करना कि intravascular है कि extravascular. Excuse me. Coming to the pitfalls, all the hemolytic anemias, they will have all these features. They will have reticulocytosis. Always and always keep in mind, very severe hemolysis might not have reticulocytosis. Why? Because reticulocytes are what? They are immature RBCs which the bone marrow is producing to counter the loss of mature RBCs which are dying in the peripheral smear. I hope you can get me if I'm not too fast. What I have said is that what is reticulocytosis? It is immature RBCs coming out in peripheral smear to counteract the mature RBCs which are dying. Okay. But when it is too severe, the bone marrow does not get time to make so many reticulocytes and push it in the blood. Plus, in Indian scenario, with severe hemolysis comes malnutrition also. Means B12 and iron deficiency, vitamin D deficiency. All this together does not help the marrow in forming too many immature cells too quickly. And hence we get a reduced retic count. Okay. Also, what other things we get are clinically we start transfusing patients. In lower centers, in small cities, doctors start transfusing patients, doctors or whoever is practicing actually. What happens is the patient goes into iron overload. That again causes a problem for the bone marrow because it gets too loaded with too much iron, again ineffective erythropoiesis can occur. So it is a gamut of symptoms because of one thing, too many things get entangled and you might not get reticulocytosis also. So yes, retic count increase means hemolysis, but if the retic count is not increased, it does not mean that the hemolysis is not there. Okay, moving on. So when you go for G6PD, let me tell you the screening tests as MRT, ascorbate cyanate test, fluorescent spot test, dye decolorization, cyto. All the details are there in sir's book. Of course, never after all these tests should never be performed when there's an acute attack of hemolysis. Do it because when there's high reticulocyte count, you'll get high immature RBCs which might have this enzyme in them. Because ऐसे भी G6PD का amount immature RBCs में ज़्यादा होता है. So वो mask कर देगा effect actual deficiency का and you might get a normal result. So always get these tests done when the patient is in the stable phase, not in the acute hemolysis. वो तो बात हुई where special tests are available. What if you are sitting in a peripheral center where the special tests are not available? Always and always look for blister cells. This is not actually what you'll get is these kind of cells or these host RBCs. यू माइट थिंक कि ये बाइट ऑफ हो गया है, लोअर पावर पे ये देखो लगेगा जैसे ये बाइट हो गया है, but this is not a bite. The hemoglobin has retracted, contracted, and has left a space over here looking like a bulla or a blister. This is skin पे fluid filled vesicle होता है, and this is very very pertinent in G6PD. So this is one thing that you have to look in a picture which is looking hemolytic to diagnose G6PD. What are the differentials? Because what other things you can get? You can get spherocytes, you can get bite cells, you can get NRBCs, you can get some poikilocytosis. All this you get in G6PD and other hemolytic anemias. So chronic non-spherocytic hemolytic anemia, G6PD is one of them. You have to rule out G6PD if you are getting spherocytosis. Spherocytosis I took in the last lecture. In neonatal hyperbilirubinemia, you might get spherocytosis and cells like what I've shown you and bite cells. So look for clinical symptoms of kernicterus. Favism, I showed you fava beans there. So favism also causes a G6PD kind of a situation, but it is acquired, not inherited. आपने fava beans खाए हैं जिसमें aglycone isouracil होता है जो ये चीज कराता है. This happens because of this aglycone isouracil. Mimics a G6PD deficiency. So before labeling something a hereditary G6PD deficiency, you have to rule this out. Okay. This is neck. Okay, so this is G6PD in that was not in nutshell. Coming to pyruvate kinase, this is the pathway again given in your textbooks where the glucose forms glyceraldehyde, phosphonolol, and here comes the pyruvate kinase. And the energy utilized causes pyruvate and lactate, again an autosomal recessive condition, and isoenzymes of pyruvate kinase are L and M. This is just for general knowledge. What you get in in pyruvate kinase, what you will get, I have not taken a picture because it is a diagnosis of suspicion. When you are ruling out all sorts of hemolysis, you are getting features like reticulocytosis and anisopoikilocytosis, but you're not able to reach a diagnosis. Your G6PD is also normal. Then get this pyruvate kinase done. It is a very rare deficiency. So I have just mentioned it because uska picture overlaps. Nothing new or specific is there in morphology. However, pyrimidine has this level of basophilic stippling and these kind of Burr cells. So this kind of basophilic stippling even in NRBC is very coarse, and Burr cells, think of pyrimidine deficiency. What else can you think of? You can think of lead poisoning. Similar picture. What else can you think of? Any other hemolytic anemia. But B12 deficiency also is accompanied by hemolysis. But this kind of extreme basophilic stippling and these kind of cells, think of pyrimidine apart from lead poisoning. Methemoglobinemia, this is the last thing. I had to search the net for this. Of course, you'll get some NRBCs, some dysbiosis because there's a lot of methemoglobin in the body. You might bone marrow undistressed, you might get giant platelets. What you get is this kind of fragmented RBC with clearing of the hemoglobin over here. Large cells, these large cells with some sort of stippling, maybe large macrocytic cells. You might get echinocytes also because methemoglobin puts the body, liver and renal functions into stress. But you get this kind of fragmented kind of an RBC. The hemoglobin is as if dying, and you might get basophilus stippling and other features of hemolysis. Okay, so this was the last topic today, a very short lecture. Naphthalene toxicity causing methemoglobin, this paper by Giselle Vohe, and the picture that I showed you is from this. You can read it for your interest. This is nice. This is a review article by under EHA by Andolfo et al. In Hematologica 2016. You can read this. This is good and interesting. Then for those who are into biochemistry of all this, go through this. This is another good paper dealing with the biochemistry and genetic basis of these deficiencies by Gisela et al. I think it is just by Professor Gisela Jacobash. Okay, so this was the basically the tutorial for today, and as I said, see these are my references. And as I said, I'll be taking short topics. So next will be a salivary gland malignant lesion. And I hope you enjoyed this and this is of some use to you. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.